The ASUS Vivobook Pro is a 16-inch creative laptop with a lot of design flair. ASUS seems to think that creative people want their notebooks to have hashtags etched into them for some reason, so the notebook has a very unique yet confusing outer shell to it. Thankfully, the specs on offer here are some of the best you can get when it comes to creative work. Its 16-inch 4K OLED panel means your viewing experience is bright and vivid, and the display meets all the best certifications around. The Vivobook Pro comes in a range of specs. The model in this review is the 16-inch OLED device, but you can also pick up a 14-inch model, and there are also versions without OLED. Instead, they just use LED panels. The 14-inch model starts at $22,999 and the 16-inch model at $27,999. Some models in the Vivobook Pro range also include the new ASUS DialPad, but this one uses the digital version on the touchpad. There's also AMD models and Intel models. If you're looking for Intel, look for the models that start with an N, and AMD starts with an M. I'll have to say right out of the gate that ASUS's new naming conventions for this Vivobook range are very confusing. Make sure you know what you're getting if you are picking up one of these notebooks. The design and style of this device is pretty plain and simple, but it works. There isn't anything over the top about it, and instead, the notebook boasts a clean shell with a strip on the lid that includes some branding and hashtags. Personally, I don't get the point of these hashtags, because if you're buying a product, why should you advertise a brand's campaign hashtags for them? Apart from that, the device packs some interesting and subtle design features here and there. The more I use this device, the more I notice them. For example, the keyboard is unique. The escape key is a bright orange and sticks out quite a bit compared to the rest of the keys. Some of the keys also have some cool symbols and icons above them. Some keys, like the Enter and Windows keys, are also translucent, and you can see the LED lights through the clear plastic. These design choices are somewhat unusual, but it also gives the notebook some sort of personality. The keys and differences all depend on the color you decide to go with too. As for the rest of the notebook, the shell is aluminium and quite sturdy, except for the display area. These are plastic. Speaking of the display, the bezels aren't exactly the thinnest I've ever seen, but it's not a huge issue. The top bezel houses the microphone and the webcam. When it comes to ports, the device comes packed with most of the ports you'll need for design and other use. On the right hand side, there's a 3.5mm combo jack, MicroSD card reader, USB ports, HDMI 1.4 and the power connector. On the left side, you'll only find 2 USB ports and LED lights. ASUS put no ports on the back of the Vivobook Pro. Here, you'll actually only find ventilation. Let's talk about the display first. This device packs the 16-inch OLED panel, and it is pretty awesome. The 3840 by 2400 pixels and 16 by 10 aspect ratio makes this panel glow from corner to corner. It also packs a peak brightness of 550 nits and a contrast ratio of 1,000,000:1. As for its color coverage, it supports 100% DCI-P3 and 133% sRGB. The refresh rate is 60 Hz, which is expected on a notebook like this. The display is a bit glossy, but it's also expected with OLED panels. It is a pity though, because it does cause a bit of reflection. Also, the display does not support any sort of touch screen. The display on the ASUS Vivobook Pro is one of the best you can get on the market, well, for work and design. If you're a gamer, you'll definitely want to look at a higher refresh rate and lower resolution. However, designers will love this panel. It comes out of the box perfectly calibrated, has great viewing angles, and even in lower brightness, color pops and images are clear. ASUS also added some great eye protection features on the Vivobook Pro. These are all customizable and optional settings that users can use to enhance the image quality. These even go as far to increase eye care by reducing the blue light. You can also adjust color temperature and use the True 2 to Life setting that automatically optimizes sharpness and image quality across the board. ASUS also added a feature called Oled Care that aims to reduce the risk of burn-in while using the notebook. It includes a pixel shift to avoid static images burning onto the panel, as well as automatically hiding the taskbar and enabling a clear mode for Windows. These settings will definitely help reduce the risk of burn-in on the OLED while you're saving some of your battery power at the same time. This device packs a full-size keyboard that is slightly recessed into the notebook body. The number pad also includes smaller keys that are not your typical full-size keyboard, so you'll have to get used to these smaller sized keys. All of the keys have the same travel distance of 1.35mm, which is common practice for these sorts of notebooks. These keys also have 3 brightness levels that you can increase. Some parts of the keyboard were brighter than others, but that's not really the end of the world. As for the touchpad, it is quite large at 130 by 85mm. It is smooth and also pretty decent. A big feature of the ASUS Vivobook Pro is the DialPad that pops up in the touchpad. Think of the DialPad as a touch analog to all sorts of tools. By touching on the DialPad, a radial menu appears on the notebook screen, and you can activate the tool or shortcut by moving the dial to the corresponding area on the circle. There's a lot to do with this DialPad, from adjusting the brightness of the display, to the sound, to color picking a color from Photoshop. Depending on your programs, will depend on how much you get out of this DialPad. The whole thing is mainly there for creators, hence why ASUS offers a trial of Adobe Creative Cloud with the notebook. These programs have been updated with specific DialPad features, but you can also create useful shortcuts for other stuff if you don't use these apps. This device packs an NVIDIA RTX 3050 GPU and an Intel Core i7-11370H CPU. The combination means you can get away with most tasks, including photo editing, video exports, and even some minor gaming. Keep in mind that the RTX 3050 is a decent GPU with a power consumption of 35 watts or 50 watts when boosted. You can pump 1700 MHz of clock frequency out of the GPU. Here are some of the gaming and productivity benchmarks. You can clearly see that this is not a gaming notebook. While you could probably get away with some HD gaming, most games won't go above 30 FPS mark on the highest settings. You can obviously tweak some settings to boost the frame rate while lowering the visual fidelity across the games. Performance-wise, the notebook held up pretty well when it came to heat and frequency. On battery, the notebook heated up to a max of 79 degrees during heavy use, and the CPU clocked at 1.5 GHz. On power, it clocked around 2 GHz and never peaked over 74 degrees Celsius. You can then boost all of this by using the performance mode. This clocked the CPU at 3 GHz and maxed the temperature at 91 degrees on the battery power. The most juice you'll squeeze out of this is by making use of the performance mode while plugged in. The CPU averaged at 3.6 GHz and maxed out the temperature at 94 degrees. This is the highest that this notebook will run on its spec. During this test, the fans maxed out at 50 decibels, which is pretty loud. Outside of heavy use, they idled between 37 and 29 decibels. Unless you're doing something intense, stick to the normal spec mode to keep these fans from making a very big noise. Lastly, we have the battery power and sound. This device packs a Harman Kardon sound system, and they are okay. You're not going to get much bass here, and overall levels are quite flat. I suggest you make use of the DTS profiles here to enhance the speaker system a bit more. As for the battery, this 6-cell 96 watt per hour battery is quite impressive. It also helps that the hardware on this Vivobook Pro is very energy efficient. You can get a max of 7 hours of average use out of the notebook with web browsing and video streaming. Anything more intense will drop this below 5 hours and less. The results are okay for a 16-inch notebook. Then again, coming from someone who uses a 16-inch M.1 Pro MacBook that lasts over 14 hours, this battery life leaves much to be desired. In the end, the ASUS Vivobook Pro is a decent notebook with a stunning display. Its gaming performance isn't up to scratch, but that is okay because that's not its main purpose. You're getting a fairly decent creative notebook here that will definitely get the job done. But that's all our thoughts on the ASUS Vivobook Pro. What do you guys think? Could you see yourself using this for some creative work? Let us know down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing. Until next time, farewell.